Now, my exclusive interview with the Israeli politician who had his visa cancelled is just moments away. But first, I want to turn to the peace talks and negotiations between Russia and Ukraine that we saw already, the meeting with Putin and Trump in Alaska, Saturday morning our time. Now, there's no deal brokered at this stage. Here was Donald Trump speaking with Sean Hannity on Fox News after the meeting.
Mr. President, that was my next question. He said at the joint press conference that and you have said this many, many times, and he confirmed for the world today, that if you were president, this wouldn't have happened. Did any of the specifics come up as to why he said that?
Biden was a terrible president in so many ways. He should have never let it happen, and it did. There are millions of people killed. I mean, it's the worst thing since I see everyone saying worst since World War II by far. There's nothing even close.
Yeah, and the death toll numbers are excessive, but even Donald Trump is learning this war is harder to solve than he first imagined. Now, let's bring in now Sky News contributor Kosha Gada. Kosha, thanks so much for your time. Now, does this come down to whether Ukraine will agree to give up territory that Russia does not currently control?
That is one of two or three of the key sticking points that really is why, as you said, and President Trump has said, this is much more difficult than he perhaps hoped or expected. The territorial demands and so-called land swaps, where will those lines be drawn? And we've come a long way from where the positions were when this war started, unfortunately. And now it looks like, Crimea very well might potentially be off the table. That is something that Russia will keep. And then where else and how far into Ukrainian land will the so-called new border be? That is a key point. The other key point, of course, is security guarantees that President Zelensky has mentioned time and again as a deal breaker for him. And the U.S. does not have an appetite to extend NATO membership to Ukraine. That's sort of a key issue where there's just too much of an impasse, if you will. But the security guarantees could take a different form or a different shape, where there's Article 5 type protections without formally being in NATO, and Europe taking more of a leading role in those security guarantees. I think those are the two key sticking points that this is going to come down to. Others, yes, but that's the crux of it. Yeah, and we have seen reports that Russia is prepared to agree to some sort of security-like guarantee or pact for Ukraine. Now, we know that Zelensky tomorrow will be in the US, European leaders as well. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is calling out the narrative that the Europeans have to be there to protect Zelensky from bullying by Donald Trump. Have a look.
But you said that they're coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're not coming here tomorrow. Oh, this is such a stupid media narrative that they're coming here tomorrow because Trump is going to bully Zelensky into a bad deal. We've been working with these people for weeks on this stuff. They're coming here tomorrow because they chose to come here tomorrow. We invited them to come.
Yeah, but this is the narrative. Kosha, what can we expect when Zelensky does arrive at the White House tomorrow?
That certainly has been the narrative. And of course, the last time he was in there in that now infamous Oval Office meeting, I think a lot of people have scar tissue from how that went down. But it looks like, behind the scenes, progress has been made. Secretary Marco Rubio did mention repeatedly in that interview that we're far from a deal. We're not on the verge of a peace deal by any stretch of the imagination, but progress has been made. That's how he was couching it. And so hopefully what we see is more progress towards those two issues that we talked about, the territorial demands and any concessions that President Zelensky may or may not be willing to concede over that. And then conversely, the security guarantees and what form of security guarantees he might be willing to accept that don't look like NATO membership. If we see a little bit of progress towards that and hopefully a friendlier press conference afterwards or a showing between Presidents Trump and Zelensky, that would, I think, be an interesting step up. Vice President J.D. Vance is reportedly going to be in that meeting, so it is a little bit of an encore, I think, of what we saw last time, but hopefully everybody's in a better position now and moving towards some sort of negotiated agreement where nobody's going to be completely happy, but hopefully everybody is happy enough that we can land towards some sort of peace.
That would be incredible. And I actually think it's a wise idea, despite the narrative, to get the European leaders there. So it's not all on Donald Trump to sort this out, and so that Europe also has to play its role in achieving some sort of either permanent peace or at least a ceasefire in the meantime. Now, just before you go, Kosha, I want to ask you about this letter that Melania Trump wrote to Vladimir Putin. This is quite rare, I would have thought. A First Lady trying to, play her part in a potential peace deal. It was hand-delivered by Donald Trump at the Alaska summit, and Melania wrote, "In protecting the innocence of these children, you will do more than serve Russia alone. You serve humanity itself." So quite powerful words from the First Lady.
Yes, it is indeed rare in general, and especially from this First Lady. She really is an enigma in many ways. She's famously very private. She's written her memoir and gives a little bit of interviews, press interviews here and there, but not really, unlike a Jill Biden or Hillary Clinton, who are much more sort of in the forefront. And for her to make this humanitarian plea, I think there's symbolic value. It's a reminder of the humanitarian toll of this. So it's about sovereignty and territory and all of that, yes, but it's also about the humanitarian crisis, really, that this is. And I think it's a reminder that that is ultimately, I think, the guiding principle of why President Trump is involved and is helping to mediate this. It really is about, if that is your end goal, reducing killing, you might be more willing to make concessions on some of the policy matters, unlike if a different goal were primary, and if that were the secondary goal, you might take a different path. And so her weighing in is a bit of a charm offensive, if you will, and maybe it plays some role in softening the optics around what's going to happen in the next few days.
All right, Kosha Gada, really appreciate the update. Thanks so much.